I found it on my doorstep this morning. A single carton of expired milk with a note taped to it. Thanks for everything, bro. 30 years of my life packaged in a spoiled dairy product. The empire I built from nothing. $9 million of blood, sweat, and calloused hands, gone. My brother Jimmy took it all. The same brother I pulled out of jail 3 times. The one I co-signed loans for when no bank would touch him. The brother who slept on my couch for 4 years while I worked 18-hour days building our family business. Our parents' dairy farm was dying when I took over. 200 acres in Wisconsin that hadn't turned a profit in decades. I transformed it into Heartland Dairy, the largest independent producer in 3 states. And now, I'm 63 years old with empty pockets and this goddamn carton of sour milk. You think you know betrayal? Let me tell you how my own flesh and blood dismantled my life piece by piece, and how I'm going to take back what's mine. The Andersons had been dairy farmers in Eau Claire County since my grandfather emigrated from Norway in 1923. By the time I was born, the third of 4 children, the farm was already struggling. My father, Harold, was a hard man, not cruel, but weathered by decades of 4 a.m. milkings and Wisconsin winters that could freeze your eyelashes together. He respected work above all else. My mother, Eleanor, kept the books and raised us kids with equal parts Lutheran stoicism and fierce protection. She'd bake cardamom bread every Sunday and make sure we all had our chores done before the school bus arrived. Then there was Jimmy, 5 years younger than me, the baby of the family. Golden-haired and quick to smile, Jimmy could charm the cream right out of the milk. While I was up at dawn helping Dad with the herd, Jimmy was sleeping in. When I was fixing fence lines in freezing rain, Jimmy was inside with Mom, helping by licking cookie batter off spoons. Michael takes after his grandfather, Dad would say, built for the work. It wasn't a compliment so much as an observation. I was sturdy, dependable Michael, the workhorse. I remember my high school graduation party. We couldn't afford much, but Mom made her famous hot dish and invited the neighbors. Dad pulled me aside with a rare half-smile. "College isn't for everyone," he said, patting my shoulder. "The farm needs you." I'd been accepted to UW-Madison with a partial scholarship. I never told them. That night, I watched Jimmy, 12 years old, perform a comedy routine for the guests that had everyone doubled over. Dad laughed so hard he spilled his beer. "That boy's going places," he wheezed. When I was 22, Dad's back finally gave out after decades of bending and lifting. The farm was hemorrhaging money. Banks were calling. I stepped in, working day and night. I studied modern dairy management through extension programs, learned about rotating pastures, breeding techniques, and milk futures. The day I made our first loan payment on time, Dad nodded once. "Good," he said. That was everything. Jimmy graduated high school and promptly crashed Dad's truck into Lake Wissota after a party. I paid for the repairs. He tried community college for a semester before dropping out. I helped him get a job at the feed store. When he was fired for showing up late, I hired him at the farm. "You're too hard on him," Mom would say. "He's finding himself." "He's 23, I'd reply. "When does the finding end?" When our parents died, Dad from a heart attack at 64, Mom from cancer just 8 months later, the farm legally became mine. I'd been running it for 15 years already. I was 37, unmarried, and now the reluctant patriarch of what remained of the Andersons. At the funeral, Jimmy pulled me aside. His eyes were red, but there was something else there, a spark of determination I hadn't seen before. "I want to help, Mike," he said, "for real this time. Let me be part of this." That was the beginning of what I thought was Jimmy's redemption story. I brought him into the business properly, taught him everything I knew. When I had the idea to expand beyond raw milk into value-added products, artisanal cheeses, organic yogurt, farm-to-table partnerships with restaurants in Minneapolis, Jimmy was enthusiastic. "We could be the next Organic Valley," he said, "but better, more authentic." I remortgaged the farm to fund the expansion, worked 20-hour days, built relationships with retailers across the Midwest, and slowly, Heartland Dairy grew from our struggling family farm into something remarkable. What I didn't know was that Jimmy was making his own connections, different kinds of relationships. The kind that would eventually leave me with nothing but an expired carton of the very milk I had once produced by the thousands of gallons. Last summer marked Heartland Dairy's 30th anniversary under my leadership. We'd gone from nearly bankrupt to a $9 million operation with distribution in 17 states. Our Northern Heritage aged cheddar had won awards. Our organic yogurt line was in Whole Foods nationwide. I'd built something our parents couldn't have imagined. Jimmy suggested a celebration, a big one. "Let's invite the whole county," he said. "Food critics from Chicago and the Twin Cities, local politicians, everyone who supported us." I was skeptical. "Seems excessive." "Mike," Jimmy said, slapping my shoulder, "you've never celebrated yourself, ever. Mom and Dad would be proud. Let me handle this. You deserve recognition." So I relented. Jimmy took charge, planning an elaborate farm-to-table dinner for 200 guests on our property. White tents appeared on the rolling pasture where our prize Holsteins usually grazed. Catering from a renowned Minneapolis chef who agreed to create dishes featuring our dairy products. String lights hung from oak trees that had witnessed 4 generations of Andersons working this land. The week before the event, I noticed Jimmy had been having hushed phone conversations, taking meetings in town without me. I chalked it up to party preparations. Then I found the papers in the copy machine. Investment documents. A new corporation called Heritage Pure, with Jimmy listed as CEO. The attorney's name on the letterhead was unfamiliar. "What's Heritage Pure?" I asked him that evening, trying to keep my voice steady. Jimmy didn't flinch. "Just exploring some options for expansion, nothing concrete." "Without me?" "You've got enough on your plate, Mike. I was going to bring you in when it made sense." Something felt off, but the party was days away. Guests were arriving from across the country. I let it go. The celebration was surreal. Me, Michael Anderson, who owned exactly 3 button-down shirts and had never taken a vacation, being toasted by Wisconsin's agricultural commissioner. Journalists taking photos. Our yogurt served in delicate glass bowls with locally harvested berries. Jimmy was in his element, working the crowd, his arm around his wife Melissa. They made a handsome couple, her blonde hair catching the sunset, his charisma drawing people in. Their 3 teenage kids helped serve appetizers, the perfect dairy dynasty. Meanwhile, I stood awkwardly in a new suit, shaking hands with people who'd been buying our products for years, but whom I'd never met. I'd always been in the production rooms, the barns, the distribution center, not the face of the company. During dinner, the county executive presented me with a plaque for economic contributions to the region. Jimmy introduced me with a speech that brought tears to eyes across the tent. "My brother gave up everything for this farm," he said, voice cracking perfectly. "College, relationships, his own dreams. He carried our family legacy when no one else could." The guests applauded. I nodded, uncomfortable with the attention, but moved by Jimmy's words. Later, as dessert was being served, a Bavarian cream made with our milk, I overheard 2 investors talking near the bar. "So it's done?" one asked. "Jimmy signed yesterday," the other replied. "Smart move bringing in outside capital. That old-school operation needs modernization." I moved closer, pretending to admire a floral arrangement. "The brother doesn't know?" the first man asked. "Apparently not. Jimmy says he's stuck in the past, won't change with the times. The board will ease him out gradually." My stomach dropped. I scanned a tent for Jimmy and found him chatting with a group that included our largest distributor and the bank manager who'd approved our last expansion loan. Before I could approach, our accountant, Dave Gustafson, appeared at my elbow.
Dave had done our books since I took over the farm. His father had done our parents' taxes. Mike, he said quietly, we need to talk. He led me away from the celebration to the old farmhouse. Once inside my office, he pulled out a folder. I received these to process, he said, laying out documents. Incorporation papers for a new entity. Transfer of intellectual property. Trademark applications. He looked up, his face grim. Jimmy's been working on this for months. He's created a holding company and transferred most of Heartland's assets into it. That's not possible, I said. I'm the majority owner. Dave slid another document across the desk, a partnership amendment with my signature. This gave him equal control, Dave said.
You signed it last year. I remembered the document. Jimmy had said it was updated insurance paperwork, brought it by while I was in the middle of a crisis with our refrigeration system. I'd signed without reading it carefully. There's more, Dave continued. The new investors are backing Jimmy's vision for automation and expansion. They're cutting costs by consolidating production. Your handcrafted approach is being phased out. Through the window, I could see the party continuing, Jimmy raising a toast, the string quartet playing, the celebration of 30 years of my life's work, a celebration Jimmy had orchestrated as a cover. When? I asked Dave. The board votes Monday. It's already decided. You'll be offered a ceremonial role, founder emeritus with a modest pension. I turned back to the window. In the distance, beyond the tents and the well-dressed guests, I could see the dairy barns where I'd spent countless hours. The fields I knew every inch of, all of it slipping away while champagne flowed. Thank you, Dave, I said quietly. What are you going to do? He asked. I straightened my shoulders. I'm going to finish this party. Then I'm going to save my company. As I walked back to the celebration, a lifetime of deference and quiet dignity burned away. 30 years I'd spent building Heartland Dairy. 30 years of missed Christmases because a milking system broke down. Relationships that withered because I couldn't leave the farm. Hands permanently calloused from work Jimmy had always found excuses to avoid. I grabbed a champagne flute from a passing server and climbed the 3 steps to the small stage where the quartet had been playing. The musicians stopped mid-note, confused. Can I have everyone's attention? My voice carried across the tent. 200 conversations gradually quieted. Jimmy's head snapped up, his smile faltering when he saw me at the microphone. I want to thank you all for coming tonight, I began. It means a lot to see how far we've come from the struggling farm I took over 3 decades ago. Polite applause. Jimmy was moving through the crowd toward me, his expression a mix of concern and warning. Most of you know the story of Heartland Dairy, how we built it from nothing into something extraordinary. What you might not know is what's happening to it right now. Jimmy reached the edge of the stage. Mike, he called, voice tight but still smiling for the guests. Maybe we save the speeches for later? I ignored him. My brother has organized this beautiful event to celebrate Heartland's legacy. What he didn't mention is that he's been secretly transferring ownership of our company to a new entity he controls. A murmur ran through the crowd. Jimmy's smile vanished. As of Monday, the farm our grandfather started, the business I saved and grew, will effectively belong to Heritage Pure, a corporation designed to remove the Anderson family traditions from our products. I saw our head cheesemaker, Lena Johansson, straighten up in shock. She'd been with us for 20 years, her Norwegian recipes the backbone of our award-winning cheeses. The handcrafted processes we're famous for, being automated. The small farmers we've partnered with, their contracts are being reviewed. The family business we've built, being dismantled for profit. Jimmy climbed onto the stage. That's not true, Mike. You're misunderstanding the restructuring. It's for growth, for all of us. I turned to face him directly. Is it true you've already signed paperwork transferring our trademarks to Heritage Pure? His hesitation was answer enough.
"Is it true," I continued, "that you had me sign a partnership amendment disguised as insurance papers?" Jimmy's face flushed. Some guests began to shift uncomfortably. "This isn't the place," he started. "Is it true," I pressed on, my voice rising, "that the board is voting to remove me on Monday?" Silence fell across the tent. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. Jimmy's jaw tightened. "It's a transition plan. You'd still be involved, as a consultant." A bitter laugh escaped me. "A consultant to the company I built from nothing, while you vacation in Cabo 4 times a year?" "You don't understand modern business, Mike," Jimmy snapped, his careful facade cracking. "We need scale, efficiency. Your way of doing things is obsolete." "My way built this company," I said, turning back to the crowd. "My way created products people drive across state lines to buy. My way employed half the people in this room." I picked up a small dish of our Bavarian cream from a nearby table. "This dessert, made with milk from cows whose bloodlines I've managed for decades. Cows I've named."
Recipe developed in our test kitchen by people who care about craft, not just profit margins. Jimmy grabbed my arm. "You're embarrassing yourself and the company." I shook him off. "The company? You mean the one you've stolen?" Among the stunned faces, I spotted Senator Johnson, who had helped us secure agricultural grants in the early days. Next to him, Catherine Williams from the Regional Food Council, who had championed our sustainable practices. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, finding a calm I didn't feel, "I built Heartland Dairy on values, family, quality, tradition, and honesty. It seems those values no longer have a place in my brother's vision." I set down the microphone and stepped off the stage. The crowd parted as I walked toward the exit. Jimmy called after me, but his voice was drowned out by the rising murmur of shocked conversations. As I passed the investor I'd overheard earlier, I paused. "You might want to review those contracts," I said quietly. "The recipes you're buying, they're up here." I tapped my temple. "And I'm not selling." Outside the tent, the summer evening was soft with the scent of alfalfa from nearby fields. I walked past luxury cars and catering vans to the old red barn where everything had started. Inside, away from the chaos I'd created, I leaned against the weathered wood wall and took my first full breath in what felt like hours. I heard footsteps and turned to find Dave Gustafson and Lena Johansson standing in the doorway. "Is it true?" Lena asked, her Swedish accent thickening with emotion. "They want to automate my cheese room?" Dave nodded grimly. "The preliminary plans call for a 70% reduction in production staff within 18 months. "What do we do now, Mike?" Lena asked. In the distance, I could see guests streaming toward their cars. The celebration was over. "Now," I said, "we fight back." The days following the disastrous anniversary party were a blur of legal consultations and sleepless nights. Jimmy didn't return to the office. Instead, I received formal correspondence from Heritage Pure's attorneys outlining my transition package. The local paper ran a front-page story: "Family Feud Fractures Award-Winning Dairy." My phone rang constantly. Employees worried about their jobs, retail partners concerned about supply continuity, and reporters hungry for details. On Monday morning, I arrived at the processing plant before dawn, as I had for 30 years. Lena was already there, along with most of our production staff. "We're with you, Mike," said Frank Olson, our head of operations since 1998. "Whatever happens." The emergency board meeting was scheduled for noon. I spent the morning reviewing every document I could find, searching for any legal leverage. Dave Gustafson had discovered that while Jimmy had managed to gain control of most business assets, the land itself, those 200 acres of Wisconsin soil, remained in my name alone. At 11:30, my cell phone rang. Unknown number. "Michael Anderson," I answered. "Mr. Anderson, this is Elizabeth Chen from Woodland Foods." Woodland was one of the largest organic grocery chains in the Midwest. "I'm calling about the situation with Heartland Dairy."
My heart sank. We supplied all 42 of their stores. Losing them would be catastrophic. Miss Chen, I understand your concerns. Actually, she interrupted, I'm calling to express our support. Woodland has built our brand on relationships with family producers who share our values. We've reviewed the Heritage Pure business plan that was sent to our procurement department. You've seen it? I asked, surprised. Yes. It was pitched to us as an exciting evolution for Heartland. But Mr. Anderson, we don't want automated, scaled-up dairy products. We want what you've been making. Our customers specifically ask for your Northern Heritage cheddar by name. I gripped the phone tighter. What are you saying? I'm saying Woodland Foods will not be doing business with Heritage Pure. We stand ready to continue our relationship with you, whatever form that takes. By the time I walked into the board meeting at the Grand Hotel in Eau Claire, I'd received similar calls from 9 other major buyers. Jimmy sat at the head of the conference table, flanked by 3 men in expensive suits, the investors. He looked tired, the confident smile replaced by a tense grimace. Mike, he nodded stiffly, glad you could join us. Wouldn't miss it, I replied, taking a seat directly across from him. The next 2 hours were corporate theater at its worst. PowerPoint presentations outlining synergies and market opportunities. Financial projections showing how automation would increase profits by 43% within 3 years.
Jimmy barely spoke, letting his investors make the case. When they finished, Jimmy cleared his throat. As you can see, Mike, this is the right move for the company. We're prepared to offer you a generous consulting contract and public recognition as founder. I stayed silent for a long moment, looking at my younger brother. The boy I'd taught to fish in Lake Wissota. The teenager whose bail I'd posted. The man whose wedding I'd helped pay for when his first business failed. I have some updates to share, I finally said, opening my folder. As of this morning, Woodland Foods, Northland Co-op, Fresh Market, and 7 other major retail partners have indicated they will terminate their relationships with Heritage Pure. Jimmy's face paled. That's impossible. They've all expressed concerns about the changes to our production methods and quality standards. I slid copies of emails across the table. Together, these partners represent 68% of our current distribution. The investors exchanged glances. Additionally, I continued, I've had conversations with Lena Johansson and 15 other key employees. They will not be continuing with Heritage Pure. They've agreed to join me in a new venture. What venture? Jimmy demanded. Anderson Family Creamery, a smaller operation focused on what we do best, traditional, handcrafted dairy products. You can't compete with us, one investor scoffed. You don't have the capital or the facilities. About that, I said, as you know, the processing plant sits on land that remains solely in my name. Your lease with me for that property expires in 60 days. Jimmy slammed his hand on the table. You'd destroy everything we've built out of spite? No, Jimmy, you tried to destroy what I built. I'm salvaging what matters, our employees, our quality, our reputation. The meeting dissolved into chaos. The investors huddled in a corner while Jimmy paced, making frantic phone calls to confirm what I'd told them. By evening, reality had set in. Heritage Pure's financing was contingent on maintaining our existing retail relationships. Without them, and without guaranteed access to production facilities, their business model collapsed. 2 weeks later, Jimmy appeared at my doorstep. He looked smaller somehow, his designer clothes unable to mask his defeat. The investors pulled out, he said without preamble. Heritage Pure is finished. I invited him in. We sat at my kitchen table, where our mother had served us countless meals. Why, Jimmy? I asked. Why not just talk to me about changes you wanted to make? He stared into his coffee cup. You never would have agreed. You're so stubborn about tradition, about doing things the old way. Maybe, maybe not, but we'll never know because you went behind my back.
"I wanted to prove I could do something big," he admitted. "Something that was mine, not just following in your footsteps." The irony wasn't lost on me. While I'd spent decades feeling inadequate compared to Jimmy's charm and our father's approval of him, he'd been feeling overshadowed by me. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now I rebuild. Smaller, but better." Jimmy nodded slowly. "And me?" That was the question that had kept me awake for weeks. Part of me wanted him gone from my life. Another part remembered the little boy who'd followed me around the farm asking endless questions. "That depends," I said carefully. "Are you willing to start at the bottom? Learn the business properly this time? No shortcuts?" Hope flickered across his face. "You'd give me another chance?" "Not in management, not for a long time. But there's an opening in the cheese room. Lena needs an assistant." Jimmy's pride warred visibly with desperation. Finally, he nodded. "Okay. One more thing," I added. "You need to face the employees. Explain what happened. Apologize. They'll hate me. Probably. But that's where you start." 6 months later, Anderson Family Creamery shipped its first products. We were smaller, operating out of just the original farm and one processing facility, but our loyal customers returned. Woodland Foods featured us prominently in their stores. The Wisconsin Cheesemakers Association awarded our traditional good a first prize. And Jimmy? He showed up every day at 5 a.m. to help Lena. He learned to make cheese the proper way, with patience, attention, and respect for tradition. His hands, once manicured for business meetings, became calloused like mine. It wasn't until last week, after inspecting our books, that I discovered something unexpected. During the Heritage Pure debacle, Jimmy had transferred $1.2 million of company funds to a personal account. I confronted him after hours.
"I was going to use it to launch a competing product line," he admitted. "After things fell apart, I kept it as insurance." I gave him a choice: return the money or leave for good. He chose to leave. This morning, I found that carton of expired milk on my doorstep. Jimmy's parting message, his final act of defiance. But as I poured the sour milk down the drain, I realized something. I'm not angry anymore. At 63, I've finally learned that while you can't choose your family, you can choose your legacy. And mine isn't about wealth or empire building. It's about quality, honesty, and doing things right. The milk Jimmy left might be expired, but Anderson Family Creamery is just getting started. As I stand here in the cheese aging room, surrounded by wheels of cheddar that will mature over the next 2 years, I realize that some things can't be rushed. Good cheese, like wisdom, takes time. At 63, I've learned that success isn't measured by dollar signs, but by sleeping soundly at night. My brother may have walked away with money, but I kept something more valuable: my integrity and the respect of the people who matter. Anderson Family Creamery is smaller than Heartland ever was, but it's honest. Every product has my name on it, and I stand behind every ounce. Sometimes the biggest triumphs come disguised as defeats. Sometimes an expired carton of milk is just the beginning of a fresh start. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted or had to rebuild from nothing, I hope my story gives you strength. Remember, it's never too late to reclaim what matters. If you found this story meaningful, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And leave a comment below if you've ever had to start over. I read them all. Thanks for listening to my story.